To the world, I am a free man. I go to work every morning, I talk to my friends, and I walk under the open sky. But the truth is, I have been living in a prison for the last 5 years. This prison has no iron bars or cold stone walls. It is built entirely of my own silence. As I speak these words, an innocent man is sitting in a federal cell. He is serving a 10-year sentence for a crime he did not commit. I know the truth because I was there that night. I was the only witness. I had the power to save him, but I chose to hide instead. Welcome to English Tide. Today's story is about the heavy price of silence and the weight of a secret that can destroy a soul. Listen closely to my confession and ask yourself, what would you have done in my place? It happened 5 years ago on a cold and rainy Tuesday night. I was walking home through a quiet suburban neighborhood. The streets were empty, and the only sound was the steady rhythm of rain hitting the pavement. I felt completely alone, tucked under my umbrella, watching the streetlights reflect off the wet ground. As I reached the main intersection, I heard the roar of a powerful engine. Out of nowhere, a large luxury SUV came flying through a red light. At that exact same moment, a delivery motorcycle was crossing the street. The driver of the SUV didn't even try to brake. The heavy vehicle clipped the back of the motorcycle with incredible force. I watched in horror as the motorcycle was thrown across the road like a toy. But the tragedy didn't stop there. The bike was launched onto the sidewalk, directly into the path of an elderly man who was waiting to cross. The impact was brutal. The elderly man was struck instantly and thrown against a brick wall. He didn't move. He didn't even have time to scream. The SUV slowed down for a moment. The driver's side window rolled down just a few inches. I was standing in the shadows, paralyzed. For 3 long seconds I saw his face clearly. He was a middle-aged man, well-dressed, looking at the disaster he had caused with wide, terrified eyes. He looked at the body of the pedestrian, then he looked right toward where I was standing. Instead of stepping out to help, he stepped on the gas. The tires screeched against the wet asphalt, and the SUV disappeared into the rain. I was left standing there, the only witness to a death that was about to be blamed on the wrong person. I woke up the next morning with a heavy feeling in my chest. I immediately turned on the local news, expecting to see a search for the luxury SUV. Instead, I saw a headline that made my blood run cold: "Drunk delivery rider kills pedestrian in horrific crash." The news report claimed that the police had found an open bottle of whiskey at the scene, right next to the delivery motorcycle. They said the young rider was intoxicated and had lost control of his vehicle, leading to the death of the elderly man. It was a perfect professional lie. I sat there, my hands shaking. I knew the truth. I had seen the luxury vehicle strike the bike first. But I also understood what was happening. The wealthy driver had used his money and his connections to plant that bottle. He had manipulated the evidence to frame an innocent man for a death he didn't cause. A massive conflict began to grow inside me. I wanted to go to the police and tell them exactly what I saw. But then a terrifying thought stopped me. If that man had the power to change a crime scene and fool the authorities, what could he do to me? If I spoke up, would I become his next target? This is when my fear became stronger than my conscience. I started thinking about my own safety and my own future. I convinced myself that it wasn't my fight. I chose to stay quiet, allowing a fabricated story to become the official truth. To protect my own life, I left a stranger to face a nightmare alone. The trial moved much faster than I expected. In the eyes of the law, the case was simple and clear. Because of the planted evidence, that bottle of whiskey I knew he didn't have, the young rider was portrayed as a reckless criminal who didn't care about human life. I sat in the very back of the courtroom feeling like a ghost. I watched as the judge looked down from his bench with a cold and serious expression. Then he delivered the final verdict, guilty of vehicular manslaughter. Because a life was lost, the sentence was severe, 10 years in a federal prison. 10 years. A whole decade of a young man's life was stolen because I was too afraid to speak a few simple words of truth. The courtroom immediately filled with the sound of pure grief. I saw the writer's mother collapse into her chair, her body shaking as she sobbed. His younger sister let out a cry of agony that seemed to echo off the high ceilings. It was the sound of a family being torn apart. As the officers began to lead the writer away in handcuffs, he paused and turned his head toward the back of the room. For one brief, haunting second, our eyes locked. He didn't know who I was, but in that moment I felt like he was looking directly into my soul. His eyes were full of confusion and pain, as if he was silently asking why no one had come to save him. I quickly looked down at the floor, unable to face him. I walked out of that building a free man, but I realized I had just traded my integrity for a lifetime of regret. As the months passed, my body began to react to the secret I was keeping. I developed chronic insomnia, a condition where your mind refuses to rest because it is constantly fighting the truth. I would lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling my heart beat with a rhythm of pure anxiety. The environment around me started to feel different too. For most people, the sound of a soft rain is peaceful and relaxing. But for me it became a haunting sound. Now, whenever the clouds gather and the first drops hit the pavement, my nervous system reacts as if the accident is happening all over again. I experience what doctors call panic attacks. My chest tightens, my breath becomes shallow, and I feel a suffocating guilt pressing down on me, making it impossible to move. I realized that I was experiencing a slow moral decay. Integrity is like the foundation of a house. Once you destroy it with a lie, the whole structure begins to crumble. I had my job, my money, and my safety, but I had lost my soul. I started to feel like a ghost among the living. I was physically present in the world, but I was no longer a part of it. I was just a shell of a man, trapped in a loop of my own cowardice, waiting for a peace that would never come as long as an innocent man remained behind bars. 5 years after that terrible day in court, I was walking near a city park when I saw a face I could never forget. A young girl about 10 years old was sitting on a bench selling handmade bracelets. I recognized her immediately. She was the younger sister of the writer, the same girl I had seen sobbing in the courtroom when the verdict was read. I approached her, my heart heavy with the guilt I had carried for years. I bought a bracelet and asked her why she wasn't in school. She looked at me with weary eyes and said, "I have to help my mother. Since my brother was sent away, we have no one to take care of us. My mother is too ill to work now." I swallowed hard and asked her about her brother. She gripped the basket tightly and whispered, "The judge said my brother was a criminal. But my brother is a good person. He loved us and worked so hard for our future. He is only in jail because no one was brave enough to stand up and tell the truth about what happened that night. He is paying for someone else's mistake." Hearing those words was like a thunderbolt to my soul. For 5 years, I had told myself that my silence was necessary for my own safety. But looking at this innocent girl, I finally saw the true cost of my cowardice. My silence had not just jailed a man, it had destroyed a family and stolen a child's future. In that moment, the fear that had controlled me for years finally died. I realized that I couldn't breathe another day as a liar while her brother suffered for my silence. My humanity finally won the battle. I looked at the girl and knew exactly what I had to do. I was done being a ghost. It was time to finally be a man of integrity. The walk to the district attorney's office was the longest walk of my life. Every step felt like a battle against the monster of my own fear. But as I sat across from the authorities and began my testimony, something incredible happened. As I described the truth of that rainy night, the suffocating weight that had crushed my chest for 5 years finally began to vanish. I wasn't just giving a statement, I was reclaiming my soul. 3 weeks later, I stood by the heavy gray walls of the federal prison. I heard the loud, metallic sound of the gates opening. The rider stepped out into the sunlight, squinting his eyes. He looked thin and his hair had turned gray, but he was free. Suddenly, I heard a small voice scream, "Brother?" It was his sister. She didn't just walk, she sprinted toward him, her small sandals slapping against the pavement. She threw herself into his arms and buried her face in his chest, sobbing so hard her whole body was shaking. He held her as if he would never let go, his own tears falling onto her hair. Watching them, I realized that I had spent 5 years running away from the truth, only to find that the truth was the only thing that could ever make me feel alive again. My friends, remember this: silence in the face of injustice is a crime. Our cowardice doesn't just protect us, it destroys others. True integrity is standing up for what is right, even when your hands are shaking and your heart is terrified. Don't wait 5 years to find your courage. What would you do if you were the only witness to a crime? Would you speak up, or would you hide in the shadows like I did? Share your thoughts below. Thank you for being a part of Andrew's journey on English Tide. Until next time, stay brave.